Jonathan Zuck directs Chum. Now let's talk about the word chum, because in the UK that means friend, buddy, but it also means the substance made up of guts, blood and things like this that you throw into the water to attract sharks for fishing or cage diving and things like this. And that's what it refers to in this movie. But more confusingly, there's actually another shark movie from 2024, also called Chum. This is a 2026 movie that stars Alice Eve, who also produces this movie. Maybe more confusingly still, this movie is surprisingly similar to the shark movie Dangerous Animals. So let me explain the plot. It focuses on a wedding party off the coast of Malta as they decide to go on this excursion on this yacht to go a bit sightseeing, things like this. However, there seems to be a rogue great white shark that is basically kind of migrated due to climate change into these kind of waters that typically don't have great white sharks. Through a series of events, this yacht ends up kind of getting stranded, and they are seemingly saved by this fisherman, but he seems to have his own agenda and may actually be effectively a serial killer. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So if you've seen Dangerous Animals, you know it's a very similar plot. There is a little bit of a difference, which we'll come on to. But let's talk about what works in this movie's favour. Now, easy to compare this to Dangerous Animals. This is definitely more of a B movie than Dangerous Animals, I would say. But I want to talk about the positives here. So let's talk about some of the kind of the character stuff. Now, I found the setup, an idea, this kind of wedding party going on a kind of a yacht trip. That's a plausible idea for why people are out on the water. That was fine. And I found the kind of the relationship between our bride and groom to be quite interesting, because they are at odds. I mean, I don't really know why they went through the wedding, to be honest with you. It's never really explained, but they pretty much decide on the day after they get married to get an annulment, because they are ideologically different in regards to their worldview. Like the husband is very much into kind of like conservation, and he worked at Greenpeace and things, whilst the wife has just taken a job at a fossil fuel company. So they're kind of at odds like that, and it's like, okay, it's interesting because no one's kind of like arguing about one's a bastard and one's not, for example. But so they're just different, different point of views and stuff, which I found, refreshing to a degree. No one's painted to be like an arsehole, for example. So I actually quite like that. Although, like I say, I don't really know why they would have gone through the wedding. It's never really explained, I have to say. But anyway, but I still quite like this setup. And I'm going to say this kind of, it was black, it's taking place, in the waters of Malta, and it was filmed there, I believe. So, it's quite nice to look at, I have to say. The yacht, looks great and everything, and it's quite well shot. Let's talk about the shark. Now, this is a shark movie, first and foremost, with a serial killer. Unlike Dangerous Animals, which is more of a serial killer movie with a shark. Because we do get a lot more shark kills in this movie than we did in Dangerous Animals. And, we'll talk about the effects again in just a second, but there is a high amount of deaths in this movie, I would suggest. The majority of which are caused by sharks, or a shark. And I was surprised how gory this movie is. A lot of the time in shark movies, one of the criticisms is that you just see like splashing around, bubbles, a little bit of red in the water. You won't really see the shark attacking people. This one you do. I mean, we see the shark grabbing people underwater, chewing, biting limbs off and things like that. How is this done on a low budget movie? Well, it looks like it's done by AI. At least specifically the shark attack scenes. It looks like they've used some actual kind of wildlife photography as well. But the actual, the gory scenes, should we call them, looks to me like it's done by AI. Now, whether you have a problem about AI is up to you. I don't. I think you can use it as a tool. So I'm just going to talk about the quality of the visuals. If you have a fundamental problem with AI, obviously that's entirely up to you. I personally don't, to be used in films like this. I think it's, you know, it's simply a tool to be used. But I will say, I would say 2 out of 3 times we see the shark, I think the actual effects look pretty good. And the use of AI is a way to get cheaper kind of like CGI type effects that you simply wouldn't get if you know, in the traditional method, I would say. So you can get kind of more complex kind of creature effects and things like this, like shark biting down on people that maybe would have cost a lot more and things like that, we simply wouldn't have been able to do in a kind of a lower budget movie. And I would say, as I say, 2/3 of the time I think the actual VFX look pretty impressive. You know, the way it's filmed and things like this, and the shark attacks look brutal and gory. And like I said, the camera doesn't kind of shy away from it. So if you like a kind of a brutal shark movie, check it out. I quite like the characters. Now, I have some problems with some of the kind of human characters. I'll talk about in the negatives, but everyone's kind of quite well defined, I would say, and they're given a little bit of kind of like character work here. Like one of the friends is seemingly taking a fancy to the husband after they kind of, you know, gets found out that there's going to be an annulment, but it never really dwells on anything like that. It doesn't really amount to anything in regards to plot progression. But nonetheless, I think it still gives a little bit of, you know, character moments at least. I found our human killer initially quite sympathetic, and he's kind of like, you know, he seems to be like a nice guy initially, and one of the differences between here and Dangerous Animals is his motivation is very different. I kind of won't say so much about any more than that at this point, but his motivation is different, but the kind of the end result is kind of similar, is what I'll say. And you know, he's a potentially interesting character. I have some issues with it, so we'll talk about it in a second. But nonetheless, he's not as interesting as he could have been, but he still had some interesting character elements to him, I would suggest. Now, this is a low-budget movie. This is definitely a B movie, but it does have an element. If you want a kind of a schlocky shark film with kind of lots of shark attacks and sort of guts and gore and stuff, here we are. Here we are. However, if you want to look for a sensible movie, you may want to look elsewhere. Now, I'm going to say, before we go into the negatives, there's going to be some mild spoilers to this, because I have to talk about a couple of things, and I'll try and keep it as vague as I can, and I won't spoil any actual plot points in the movie, but I am going to talk a little bit about the characters and their motivations, and as such, that's going to be a little bit mild spoilery, so you've been warned. Okay. Some of the issues that I have with this movie. Before we get on to that, I think some criticism might get levelled at the acting, I would suggest. Now, I think it's actually probably ADR that would give the impression that some of the line delivery sounds a little bit unnatural, shall we call it. But it sounds more like it's an ADR issue rather than necessarily a performance issue. But the end result is maybe, you know, the same. It doesn't matter how we got there. Sometimes I think the line delivery sounds stilted from our dialogue. Now, it looks like to me it was ADR rather than necessarily bad acting, but whatever the case, that's how it turns out. So there's that. I think this movie has some really contrived moments. So let's talk about the yacht and how it ends up getting disabled. It's a series of events that are rather silly. For example, that we have this shark. It hits the yacht. The anchor falls in and gets wedged. Then the captain falls in and he gets kind of like chopped by the shark. And then the radio somehow breaks. Someone for some reason pulls the cable out the radio and it breaks. And then the engine blows up because someone dropped something in the. It's like it's a really contrived way to get this kind of like this ship you know, sort of disabled. It's like a series of events that are like, come on. I mean, I guess it's not in the realms of impossibility, but it seems really contrived. I mean, the other thing I would say about this thing, it's kind of like, we're off the coast of Malta. It's a touristy place. There ain't going to be this kind of like a desolate area where you're just not going to see quite a lot of ships and boats and things like that. I mean, it's not really like a out of the way place necessarily. It's, you know, light and sunny. There's going to be plenty of kind of tourist boats and things and fishing boats or whatever. But you know, you don't see any apart from obviously our human antagonists. So let's talk about our human antagonist, and this is where I think that we're going to get, as I say, I'm going to keep it as vague as I can. His motivation is he wants to get revenge on a shark, on this particular kind of great white. Now I have all sorts of problems with this, okay? Number one, he sort of tells us that this shark only wants to attack humans, right? And this is why he can't feed it like normal chum or animals. But if it's not eating humans, it's still got to eat something. And it's just like, well, you know, you don't have to feed it humans because it's going to eat something else if it can't find a human. It seems a little ridiculous to me that kind of plot that is there. The other thing is as well is his motivation is he's trying to get revenge on this shark because this shark has killed someone that he loves. And okay, I guess you can understand that broad motivation, almost like a kind of like Moby Dick style kind of personal revenge against this animal, right? But that doesn't really explain, as I say, why he's just not following the shark and getting it to kind of like, you know, why it has to feed it humans. It's going to eat other stuff, but also when he kills humans and seemingly has no bad feelings about it. So it's kind of like, well, you know, it's not like he's a psychopath like the killer in Dangerous Animals. He's doing this because he wants to get revenge on the shark, but he never really feels like guilt or any kind of like any kind of feelings of regret about what he's sort of doing, which would kind of lead you to believe he is actually kind of psychopathic. And so his motivation is just sort of like, it's really messy because, you know, if he's doing it for a means to an end, even if we can just believe, okay, for whatever reason, he can't seem to catch his shark unless it's eating a human. Let's just go with that. But he never really feels bad about what he's doing, and if he's not killing it because he's, you know, because he's meant to be a serial killer, he's killing people to, you know, as I say, to try and track this shark, then surely he would at least have some regret or feel bad about it and things like this. So I wasn't buying that at all. It just seemed kind of somewhat sort of ridiculous to me. And then let's talk about that shark, because we you know, we're led to believe that this shark only wants to kill humans, and it's like, well, you know, it's generally speaking, it's fairly kind of common knowledge that sharks generally don't hunt humans, because the attacks that you tend to get, you know, from shark attacks is normally mistaken identity, and it's a bit odd that this shark has got a taste for human, and now it only wants to kind of attack humans. Well, surely it's eating a bunch of other stuff as well, seals and all the rest of it. Surely it's like, why hasn't it got a taste for seals? You know, so this movie has some really kind of silly kind of logic and stuff like that is very like B-movie, like don't think too much about it. It's just kind of like ridiculous. There's this kind of a scene where the police, we get some police that kind of turn up, and you know, it's like, come on, you people would be screaming, even if there was like this. I won't sort of spoil the scene, but it doesn't really make any sense. Let me just kind of turn back to the effects. Now, I would say 2/3 of the effects look pretty good. Now, again, I think a lot of this is using AI, but there are occasions where the effects don't look good. And it is the case that you're using AI, just do another render. Because there's one scene especially that's awful. Other scenes, the shark seems to change size. And again, I think it's because we're in the early days of AI, people, and it's, you know, there's not that consistency. So the shark looks different in different kind of shots. And there are shots where, you know, it doesn't quite work and things like this. I would say it's in the minority. I would actually tell you, for the most part, the effects is, you you know, I quite enjoyed them. I'll say that. But there are, I would say, you know, 1/3 of the time I think the effects look not particularly strong, shall we say. And it definitely feels into this is a cheapy shark film. You know, so there you go. It's kind of a silly movie, to be honest. And I don't want to go into too much more into that, but there's some other elements as well. But look, it's dumb, but it's entertaining. Certainly, I think the majority of shark movies out there are probably a little bit like that. It isn't one of the kind of like the underrated gems that you might enjoy. But it's not bad. It's an okay fun watch if you somewhat turn off your brain. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. What were your thoughts if you've seen it? Please leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Whoa, they're getting close! Ah!